Hello, everyone. Today I'll be talking to you about America's native nut trees and their economic situation and viability as of now. So these are all tree nuts. You have peanuts as well in the nut category, but peanuts aren't technically nuts. They're beans, more or less. They're related to beans. So we're just going to set peanuts aside, even though they offer a lot of the same nutritional benefits of tree nuts. We're going to talk specifically about tree nuts today because aside from peanuts, they're a very unique source of protein and calories coming from the plant world. I'll explain why in just a bit. First, let's take a deep dive into what different nuts are grown around the world. In the top left, we have hazelnuts. Hazelnuts originate from Turkey, and they are grown to make the delicious spread we know as Nutella. They're also grown in the Pacific Northwest, and there's a large hazelnut breeding program going on at Oregon State University right now. At the top center, we have the Persian walnut. As you might guess, this is from the region of Persia, or Iran, as it's known nowadays. It's also been naturalized across much of Europe. Therefore, its colloquial name is also the English walnut. In the top right, we have the sweet almond. Almonds are from Central Asia, the Kazakhstan, Iran area, and they're grown all throughout Mediterranean regions of the world, particularly California. In the bottom right, we have pistachios. Pistachios are from the more desert regions of the Middle East, typically from Iran, and they're very popular in the Middle East as well as California. And on the bottom center, we have the pecan. Pecans are native to southern United States, like Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana. Their range goes as far north as Kansas and Missouri. They're the only American nut on this list that's one of the big nuts grown around the world. And in the bottom left, we have the Brazil nut. As you might guess, this is from Brazil. It originates in the tropical rainforest and is now cultivated for use in mixed nuts. And it's got a very unique, mild flavor, and they're very delicious, as are all nuts, in my opinion. So nuts are rich in calories and protein. They're complete protein, which is unique in the plant world, because you don't need to eat a supplemental protein with it like you do with rice and beans or corn and beans. They're complete as is, as if it were meat in some regards, but they have a much lower impact on the environment than meat production does. So that's a very interesting pro in favor of nut cultivation. They're rich in vitamins and antioxidants. They're always in demand, and they're beneficial to local ecology because of some unique benefits that I'll get to in a bit. So these unique ecological benefits include carbon sequestration, which means that since they're trees, they take in carbon from the atmosphere, and then they turn it into their trunk or sugars or leaves and roots. They use the carbon from the atmosphere to build themselves out, and that keeps it in the tree. And so it can actually help mitigate climate change, which is a very unique benefit to orchard crops that you don't get from row crops. It's great for soil health because you're not tilling the earth all the time. Great for biodiversity. Birds have habitats again when you plant out orchards. And it can be used in something called agroforestry, a traditional method of farming that dates back millennia, where trees, shrubs, vegetables, and row greens are all mixed together in a very unique way that's planned out with a lot of forethought to mimic the natural environment. You get beneficial insects coming in. Higher biodiversity means better ecological health, better soil health, better water usage. And so agroforestry can really benefit a local community in a way that row crops can't, because it provides a diversity of food sources. It's easier on the environment, can bring back local animals, and it also provides a steady stream of income because things get ripe at different times throughout the year. So this is a picture of a walnut orchard. And from here on out, we're going to be talking about the nut trees that are native to North America, starting with the pecan. Pecans are the golden boy. for America's nut trees. Pecans are the only globally successful American nut tree to date, but I'd like to change that. They can live for hundreds of years. The pecan trees that Thomas Jefferson gave George Washington are still alive and producing nuts at Mount Vernon. So that gives you a frame of reference for how long these trees can live. They're easy to process compared to a lot of nuts. They have thin shells and a lot of meat within the shell. Something unique about pecans compared to the other North American nut trees is they typically like warm winters. Wild pecans can grow as far north as Missouri, as I was saying before, but the commercially viable cultivars, cultivated variety, it's cultivar, they're grown in the American South as well as the Southwest, like Arizona and New Mexico, because they need that warm winter. They've been used successfully in what's called silvopasture, where trees are grown interspersed in a pasture, and then cows or sheep or something along those lines go in and graze in between the trees. And it's been successful and could easily be applied to other trees, such as black walnut. Black walnut is very unique among trees because it is the most valuable temperate hardwood in the world. It's used for fine furniture and veneers, and it also produces a very delicious, nutritious nut. They're distinct from Persian walnuts in their flavor, and you can see in the top right, they look different too, but they're similar enough that they could be marketed as walnuts, and I think that it could really work. It would be great for local communities because not only could these be used in agroforestry, but they're really cold tolerant. So you could plant these in a region where pecans just wouldn't be able to survive. Think of Appalachia or the Great Lakes region. You could plant out a black walnut orchard and you could harvest the nuts and also harvest the wood if a tree were to die or reach a certain age. And it would be a great source of income for struggling communities in the Midwest and Appalachia. Hickories are related to pecans. You can see in the bottom right that the hickory nut actually looks like a miniature pecan nut. They are used typically for tool wood because the wood is extremely hard and durable, and there's a lot of hybridization potential with pecans to make hardier, more not long-lived, but productive varieties that can be grown in different places. Lastly, we have the butternut. You probably haven't heard of the butternut before. It's not grown commercially, but it has been used traditionally by Native Americans and colonists, settlers, as a source of food because, like all of the species in the juglans family, they produce edible nuts. Unfortunately, recently there has been a disease introduced to the butternut. They call it the butternut canker, and it's killing these trees off at an alarming rate. Therefore, they're actually an endangered species. What a lot of scientists are suggesting is the use of gene editing to strengthen the fungal resistance of these trees for biodiversity and conservation purposes, which could then in turn be used for economic purposes. And again, agroforestry or in an orchard setting, again, as far north as Quebec City or even more into Canada, which would be amazing. So in sum, nuts are great for communities because they provide ecological and economic health and prosperity. They're easier on the environment than row crops, and they are ready-made for our American climate because they are native to the Americas. With all that in mind, I'd like to turn it over to you. Send me any questions you may have. Thanks for your time.